Skirk is finally out, and it's time to learn everything there is to know about this swordswoman from another universe. Now, while her talents might seem simple, there's a lot of advanced tricks Skirk can do to increase her DPS, not to mention a lot of ways to play her optimal rotations, which I'll be covering in this video. But on top of that, I'll also show you the best teams with calculations, provide weapon and artifact rankings, and even showcase her Constellations power growth all the way to C6. So strap in because this Ultimate Skirk Guide video has it all. Quick reminder, as always, I made this video on Creator Experience server, so the footage or stats shown here are subject to change. Okay, so the first thing I want to address, because I saw a lot of people asking about this from the previous video, which Skirk's playstyle should you go for? Well, the answer is quite simple. The main one is going to be normal attack playstyle, which deals the most damage, and in majority of situations, this is the best way to play Skirk. But in teams where Skirk is played in double DPS comps, or when you notice the fight can be ended sooner with the burst, then this Nuke playstyle is recommended, because here's the thing, while normal attack playstyle outputs more damage over a period of time, compared to the burst, they're actually not that different in terms of overall performance, since normal attack playstyle can be played up to 12.5 seconds, while burst animation is 3 seconds. So by now, I hope it's clear that burst contains a ton of damage over a short period of time, but normal attack playstyle has more damage over a longer period of time. Plus, usually it works better when waiting on other teammates' cooldowns to finish. Finally, there's the hybrid playstyle, and you basically utilize both normal and burst playstyles to unload the biggest amount of damage with Skirk. But this is only possible in Abyss because she can start with maximum energy, or you can also play around this in World Exploration. Still, long story short, go for hybrid playstyle in the first Abyss chamber or rotation, then normal attack playstyle by default whenever possible, and only use burst Nuke playstyle if you're confident she can finish off the enemy quickly, or if she's played in double DPS teams. Don't worry, I'll soon showcase each playstyle in real time, but for now, let's quickly go over what fuels Skirk. Serpent Subtlety. Basically, she doesn't use regular energy, and instead, both her enhanced normal attacks and burst rely on this special resource, which I'll just call Serpent's Points, or points. Now, by tapping her skill, she enters a 7-phase flash mode, which allows her basic attacks to deal crowd damage, and they become much more powerful. But also, she gains 45 Serpent Points, and every second, she loses roughly 7 points. So by default, she can keep attacking with her enhanced normal attacks for about 6.5 seconds before the initial points run out and the mode is over. On the other hand, if you want to use her burst, she needs 50 points, and because tapping skill immediately starts consuming the points, you will want to hold the skill so she just gains the points. Now, the skill can only generate 45 points, so the other way to gain them would be by relying on her first passive, Reason Beyond Reason. When Frozen, Superconduct, Cryoswirl, and Cryocrystallized reactions are caused by any teammate, a Void Rift appears every 2.5 seconds, and a maximum of 3 can exist. At C0, they don't do anything besides providing Serpent Points, and to gain them, Skirk needs to do one of the following: hit enemy with her charge attack or use the burst button during their skill mode. And if you go with the latter option, this burst actually is different from the regular one, but also, using it will empower her next 10 normal attacks, which become even better depending on how many Void Rifts were absorbed. Finally, she can also absorb these rifts by holding the skill button. Now, each rift absorbed grants her 8 Serpent Points, and a maximum of 3 can exist. That means she can get at most 24 points from an absorption. Now, I know this all sounds confusing, so let's put this into actual perspective. Assuming Skirk starts with 0 points and 3 Void Rifts generated by other teammates, when tapping the skill, she first gains 45 points. Then, when spamming normal attacks, if she uses the burst or charge attack, she absorbs the Void Rifts, and that extends the duration, which means by now, she's playing with 69 points or 10.5 seconds duration. Nice. But if, let's say, more Void Rifts appear during her normal attack spamming due to the aforementioned reactions, she can yet again use charge attack to gain additional points. However, the maximum duration will be 12.5 seconds. No matter how many points left, it will just end after that period of time. Now, in terms of combos, the most simple one works like this. After all support buffs are set up, start with the skill to enter the 7-phase flash mode, then immediately press burst, and then do a full N5 combo twice. Then use charge attack, and then you should be able to do roughly 2 more N5 combos, and if possible, N2 or N3. This depends on your server's latency, and in team section, I'll also show how much value she gains from attack speed. Now, you don't have to play full 12.5 seconds combo. Usually, most buffs will have expired by then, so as a good rule of thumb, I like to absorb Void Rifts once with the special burst when spamming her normal attacks, preferably when 3 of them are on the field, so I can at least then achieve the 10.5 second duration. In fact, let me show you how all of this works live. Okay, so here I am with my non-scripted depressive voice. What I'll first do is unleash all the buffs from all the other teammates, then switch back to Skirk and do the most simple combo first. Okay, so we start with Escoffier tap E, Farina tap E, Q, Back to Escoffier, burst. Then to Shenhe, hold EQ. Then tap EQ. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Charge attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, yeah, only managed to do 4 N5s. And that's because it's the most simple combo. Sometimes it's possible to also land like N2 or N3, but things have to be going pretty much perfectly to happen. Also, you'll notice that Skirk is dealing really crappy damage, and that's because she's wielding the level 1 sword as to not to kill the enemy too fast, because apparently everything dies really fast in Overworld when playing Skirk. Anyway, back to Scripted Gotcha Gamer. Okay, so hopefully that was clear enough how you can play Skirk's normal attack spamming in a simple way. Just make sure to at least achieve a minimum of 10.5 seconds duration, or absorb at least 3 Void Rifts with the special burst. Speaking of which, the actual burst Nuke playstyle is quite straightforward. As I said, it's best utilized in double DPS teams, like when playing with Neuvillette, or if you can quickly finish off the enemy. But in a nutshell, just hold a skill to absorb any of the Void Rifts, and then press the burst button for some big damage. Now, you definitely want to absorb at least 2 Void Rifts, because while her burst costs 50, every point until 62 will improve her burst damage massively. So as you can see from this table, 2 rifts will result in 61 points, so almost max, and that will be pretty much perfect, but if possible, over 62 points or 3 rifts, it will be slightly better. And here's my live example. Okay, back again to me doing live showcase. The buffs I'm about to set up with the other teammates is going to be exactly the same, and the point of it is that she has 3 Void Rifts ready on the ground for her to absorb when doing the burst, so let's try this. Okay, we're about to do this. We go back to Skirk, 3 Void Rifts ready, hold E and Q, and this is it. Bye-bye! And with this specific rotation I've executed, it's basically a guarantee that there'll always be 3 Void Rifts ready for Skirk, and this means she will always unleash the best possible burst attack. Okay, let's go back. Finally, with the hybrid playstyle, as I said, you start in Abyss with full Serpent points. So after setting up all the buffs, start with the burst and then immediately tap the skill to go into normal attack spamming, which will result in ridiculously powerful damage that Skirk can unleash in the first rotation. Now, because after tapping the skill, no matter if you swap or end it early, the points return to 0, the only way to carry over extra energy to the next Abyss room would be by holding down her skill, which actually carries over the points, and hopefully by then your other off-field damage units will finish the room. Otherwise, in open world, holding the skill and absorbing the Void Rifts can help you also start off with enough Serpent points to spam this playstyle against something like world bosses. But here's my live showcase of this in the Abyss. Okay, so now we're in the Abyss. This is where I will show you the hybrid playstyle. The rotation for other teammates yet again is the same. So let me quickly set up everything and then I'll start talking when Skirk is ready to do her damage. Okay, and there we go. Now we first start with Skirk by doing the burst. Then we press E, then we attack. And notice how the burst is actually on cooldown. So she needs to absorb with the charge attack. And I use charge attack, and then the Void Rifts are absorbed. And yeah. Now, as I said, you can actually carry over the points to the next Abyss chamber. You just gotta make sure to do it at the right time. Like, let's say, Escoffier summons now, I press hold E, and yeah, as you can see, we're in the second chamber now, and Skirk's burst is actually partially charged, as you can see. And I believe this will be enough points to, again, unleash her burst, and then start with the normal attack spamming rotation. Okay, let's go back. Now, with these playstyles out of the way, there's also 2 passive talents that further define Skirk's power. Return to Oblivion basically states that each Hydro or Cryo teammate that hits the enemy, besides Skirk, will further buff her attacks, and these are actually multipliers. So in other words, with a full Hydro and Cryo team, her damage will be massively boosted by these multipliers, to the point where I've showcased in my previous video, Barbara, who just enables this passive, is better than C0 Shallonen with Signature and Cinder City. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, as long as her team comp is strictly made up of Hydro and Cryo teammates, then everyone's skill talent is increased by 1. So for Skirk, this is especially good because her enhanced normal attacks are actually located inside the skill, but for other units like Escoffier or Farina, this is also a nice boost in damage. But yeah, when leveling Skirk's talents, focus on both the skill and burst at the same time, while you can leave her normal attacks unleveled. That white damage is not worth it, and I would only level it if needed when you fully maxed out everything else on her. Okay, but with the basic stuff out of the way, now I quickly want to go over her advanced techniques because, surprisingly enough, Skirk has a few tricks up her galaxy sleeve. So first trick would be to hold the skill at the start of rotation. This is basically free 45 Serpent points you can gain with her, and then quickly swap to other supports to do their thing. And by the time you swap back to her, because the skill's cooldown is only 8 seconds, it should be ready by then to be either used for normal attacks or burst. Then we have all the tricks you can do while performing normal attack spamming. So you can actually cancel the N5 attack with burst button, as you can see here. It happens almost instantly, and in fact, I recommend in most rotations to first start off with N5 and then cancel it with burst, since she will surely unleash at least 2 more N5s that will benefit from the burst boost she gains. However, you also can do some dash canceling, like dash canceling N5, which in my opinion, it does feel a bit sluggish to do it, better to just cancel it with the burst if possible. However, remember that her charge attack is also used to absorb rifts for that longest 12.5 second field duration, and what you can do is actually dash cancel it to save some time. Finally, and this is the most niche use case, right before her skill mode ends, if you do a charge attack and there are any void rifts, even after the skill ends, she ends up with the absorbed Serpent points, which normally wouldn't happen because once the skill mode is over, any points remaining become 0, but somehow we can forgo this with charge attack at the last second. And this kinda becomes slightly useful on next rotation, where she can start off with a bit more Serpent points. But anyway, here's an advanced live showcase of me utilizing most of these tricks. Okay, and finally we're here to do all the advanced techs together with Skirk's normal attack playstyle. So again, let me set up the rotation with the other buffers so there's enough void rifts, and then I'll try to narrate what I'm doing with Skirk. So we start a rotation with the hold E to generate some Serpent points. And then we do E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cancel into Q, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, charge attack dash cancel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I got the second or third hit also landed there. So yeah, in total 4 and 5s and 1 and 2 or 3, I think. But yeah, I didn't do the charge attack at the very end to get some small amount of points for the next rotation because the charge attack damage really sucks a lot damage. I know that's the weapon I'm using right now is like level 1, but in practice it's still better to just land N2 or N3. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, that's enough listening of my depressed and sleep-deprived voice. Hope you got the basic gist of how to play Skirk, because next part is all about how to build this tourist. Alright, starting off with weapon options, her best in slot Azure Light offers quite a lot of value because, essentially, she's getting 22.1% critical rate, 40% critical damage, and 48% attack. So yeah, that's what you get for pulling a signature weapon in 2025. However, surprisingly enough, Haran Gapaku Futsu, I don't know how to pronounce it, but this sword is only 15% behind her signature, so pretty impressive for a sword that came out along with Ayato more than 3 years ago. Then we have Primordial Jade Cutter. For a standard weapon, it actually achieves quite a lot for Skirk. The only problem with this weapon is that if you're using it with Hunter's Set and Cryo Resonance is active, she will literally overcap critical rate without any critical rate substats. So then, try to only aim for critical damage and attack percent substats if using the Hunter's Set. Another weapon on roughly same power scale is Summit Shaper, and to fully utilize it, you'll want to run Skirk with a shielder because you will miss out on about extra 5% damage potential, which would make the sword weaker than all the next options. So if there's a shielder, then it's about as good as Jade Cutter. Then we have the good old Mist Splitter. Skirk is actually able to fully benefit from this weapon's passive, but it still slightly lags behind the previously mentioned options. But as for the remainder of 5 stars, Uraku Misugiri, Absolution, and Light of Folier's Incision, all of them are a bit weaker than previously mentioned options, while their order of power differs ever so slightly, with Absolution coming out on top. But here's the cool thing about Skirk. She does have 2 great free-to-play sword options. Finale of the Deep, which funnily enough shares the name with her signature artifact set, Finale of the Deep Galleries, but this sword in a nutshell is best utilized with a healer because Skirk will gain a lot of attack, which she badly needs because her multipliers are actually very high. However, most of her teammates usually provide damage buffs, and so this attack buff coming from the sword's substat and passive will be super useful for her. Now, she even has a better option, and that is the time-limited event weapon Calamity of Eshu, which even beats some of the 5-star options. However, this sword is only good when there's a shielder in the team, so someone like Dahlia has no problem upkeeping the sword's passive, but also, this sword is best utilized in normal attack playstyle. Otherwise, the remaining 4-star weapon options like the Black Sword, Blacklift Longsword, and Wolffang are weakest of the bunch. I do not recommend using them, maybe aside from the fully refined Black Sword, but even then, Finale of the Deep with a healer is just too good to pass up on, especially since it's craftable. Or Calamity of Eshu is even better with a shielder. But of course, as you can see here, a couple of 5-star swords are better than the free-to-play options, but not by much. So if you have one of them, use it. Now, moving over to the artifacts territory, this is where we have to talk about Skirk's signature set, because while it is the best set when compared to Marechaussee Hunter, or simply called Hunter set, it's actually about 3 to 4% better. However, there are some problems with her signature set. When doing the hybrid playstyle, which is when you use the burst nuke and then immediately go into normal attack spamming, the 4-set bonus becomes disabled for normal attacks for 6 seconds after the burst, which is like half of her normal attack rotation, and usually when all other buffs are also active, so not so great. But more importantly, Hunter set is located at the same domain as Golden Troop, a set that you'll probably have equipped both on Farina and Escoffier if you have them. And this domain in general has been a super popular farming place for years now, and it's very likely those who pulled for Farina have at least some kind of good Hunter set as well. Obviously, the main drawback of the Hunter set is that it's useless without Farina, but the extra 3 to 4% damage gain, in my opinion, is only worth if you're dead set on fully maxing out Skirk, but that might cost thousands if not tens of thousands of resin, and in that case, hopefully you're also building Veressa or Xiao from that domain. But long story short, if you have Farina and already a decent or good Hunter set, it's more than enough for Skirk to be very powerful, while the extra few percent of damage you could gain from her signature will require tons of farming from the latest domain. Still, when Skirk starts getting Constellations, her signature set will become better with each new upgrade, so keep that in mind. Anyway, moving over to other options, Desert Pavilion Chronicle or DPC supposedly is about as good or even better on C1 Skirk. Yes, the 2-set bonus is worthless, but because C1 damage is categorized as charge attack motion value, it gets boosted by the 4-set, and the attack speed with someone like Dahlia or Mika provides better likelihood to land combos faster. So this set overall is pretty good for C1 Skirk, but I would only recommend using it if you already have DPC set available. But I wouldn't farm for it, specifically just for this. Now, next one would be Blizzard Strayer, which provides a ton of critical rate, but the problem with this set, like always, is that bosses are not freezable, and this set is really only best against freezable enemies. So for those veterans out there who are about to dust off your Blizzard Strayer, just keep in mind these limitations. Finally, a couple of random sets like Vermilion that's usable with Farina, Gladiators that's basically only good with normal attack playstyle, and then Retracing Bolide if using with Eshu Sword and Shielder, they are all fine, but definitely fall behind the other options by quite a lot. So only use them if you haven't got a good signature or Hunter set. Now, as for the artifact main stats, the usual attack percent Sans, Cryo Goblet, and critical rate or damage Circlet is fine. However, the difference between attack percent and Cryo Goblet is quite small, especially if you will be playing Skirk in her premium team of Farina and Escoffier, and in that case, if you have a really nice attack percent goblet sitting around, yeah, you can easily use it. Finally, when it comes to the subset priority, focus on getting critical rate and critical damage, and then attack percent and even flat attack. Of course, if you're using something like Hunter set or Jade Cutter, be careful not to overcap the critical rate. So I've talked a lot about Skirk teams in my early access video, and to not repeat myself too much, I've instead assigned her team compositions into various tiers. Obviously keep in mind these are still work in progress and should not be used as some kind of final evaluation, but more like an initial look at how Skirk performs in these teams. Still, as you'll notice, 99% of her teams will be made up of Cryo and Hydro exclusively, and that's because, as I said before, the multipliers she gains both for her enhanced normal attacks and burst are just way too damn high, to the point that any teammate from Cryo and Hydro, by not even doing anything, will outperform someone like C0 Shallonen with Signature and Cinder City. In very rare cases, if not using Skirk's premium team, then maybe sometimes Shallonen or Kazuha who does about as much could be considered viable, but these are very rare cases. Anyway, so looking at the tiers, one thing should become apparent very quickly. Not having Escoffier results in about 30% less damage, while not having Farina results in about roughly 20 to 25% less damage, depending on the teams shown. While not having both, Well, this results in about 37 to 40% damage loss. Now, you can also see the word baseline appear in most teams. Well, this assumes C0 Furina, C0 Escoffier, and C0 Skirk with Finale of the Deep Sword at the minimum. And as you can see, the last slot actually has very little impact on overall team's damage, and that's because there is no best fourth teammate for Skirk that massively overshadows every other choice. Like, her big 7 options are Mona, which you can see at C4 slightly outperforms Mulaney, who has TTDS and Cinder City, but then moving downwards, Citlali and C6 Dahlia variations linger at about the same value, except you'd have to be using Calamity of Eshu here. Then we have Yelan with Favonius Bow, and there's Xingqiu, who does fall behind a little compared to Yelan, but not by that much to be honest. And finally there's Shenhe, who is basically weaker by a bit compared to others. But here's the thing about Shenhe. We did see from the livestream and even some early access videos that Stygian Onslaught mode will have this secret source automaton boss, which by default will take very little damage at first and requires constant cryo damage to reduce its resistances. And after running many tests, it is clear that Shenhe will be superior against this boss, even if your benefits are like few percent behind some other options. So keep in mind that these team comps, while mostly evaluated for Abyss, can gain different evaluations depending on the game mode. But yeah, other than that, we can see a ton of different variations in the last 4 slot because the big 7 all fall in line around the same tier. And then only after finally we start going outside of the baseline team comp, we can see these tiers are quite behind. That's not to say they're unplayable. This tier easily can still clear current Abyss even without Escoffier or Furina, but obviously the damage will be much lower compared to the baseline. And then yeah, the final tier here is basically mostly free to play or even few teams outside the usual Cryo Hydro composition, but overall the highest tier above baseline will take into account things like if someone has an extra Constellation or their signature is equipped, and ultimately we can see that Constellation 1 Skirk with signature and baseline team almost outperforms her actual baseline by about 35 to 40%, which makes sense because Skirk's vertical power scaling is probably one of the most insane so far. Also, I've highlighted teams here in which Skirk will be played as the second DPS, or basically quick swap playstyle of her unleashing Burst Nuke, and as you can see, it really depends on what type of investment the team has, but overall, her 2 best quick swap teammates so far are going to be Mulaney and Neuvillette variations, along with, of course, Escoffier and Furina. Finally, regarding the attack speed shenanigans, in these team calcs, I'm assuming Dahlia is C6 because his last Constellation gives 10% extra attack speed, which then basically guarantees you can land extra N5 combo, but with C0 Dahlia, it's about 5% less damage Skirk will deal, so overall, not a big deal. And then the other attack speed booster Mika simply is worse than Dahlia because while he can help with an extra N5 combo, there's no shield, so no Calamity of Eshu. Of course, if the calcs were for something like her signature, then they would both end up on about the same ranking. However, keep in mind it's hard to evaluate shield potential in actual damage numbers because, well, Skirk will be safe from interruptions, but nobody takes that into account when calculating sheet DPS. Anyway, these are the teams, don't take them too seriously right now. I'm sure as time goes on, the community will discover even more about this. I mean, 1 million heads are better than 1. It's time to talk about spending Primo strategically for this queen. Okay, so starting with C1, Void Rifts, after they get absorbed, will unleash a 500% motion value attack that counts as charge attack damage. I'm assuming they've done this because categories of normal or burst damage would mess up and enable the 6-second cooldown on her signature artifact set, which is why I said previously in my artifacts section, both Hunter and DPC set can boost this new type of damage. To be honest, even the 15% crowd damage from signatures still can boost this damage, but overall, 1500% motion value coming from this attack each time Void Rifts are absorbed is quite insane, especially in the longer 12.5 second duration, because on average, you can absorb 5 Void Rifts, so that's 2500% extra motion value when doing normal attack playstyle, and usually 3 Void Rifts when doing burst attack playstyle. But C2 is where Skirk goes crazy mode, because now her skill provides 10 more Serpent points, and the burst now can go up to 72 maximum points for better damage, which, let me tell you, that's a lot as you can see here in the comparison, and this Constellation actually makes her burst playstyle almost on par with the normal attack playstyle. However, during normal attacks when she uses the special burst button, now she also gains 70% attack boost. So a stat that she heavily desires is now given up plenty to her, which is again crazy. Now C3 will boost her burst by 3 levels, and then C5 does the same for her skill. Again, almost same power growth for normals as C2. Then C4 basically gives 40% extra attack when utilizing that talent to boost her multipliers with Cryo and Hydro teammates, which again, it's very useful for Skirk. And then finally, when it comes to C6, C6. The Void Rifts, yet again, will gift Skirk a new ability that basically will allow her to unleash coordinated attacks when she's using her burst, normal attacks, or even when she gets hit. The damage is quite massive, and at this point, C6 R1 Skirk can demolish everything so fast, it's not even funny. And I'm sure the whale speedrunners will find ways to have fun with her. Not me though, I'm not getting her to C6. However, when it comes to investing into Skirk vertically, I would say, assuming you already have Farina and Escoffier, then both Skirk's signature and first Constellation are about on the same power level. The difference is not that big. Or even better, get C2 Skirk, because then you'll definitely feel a massive surge of power. Otherwise, if you don't have Escoffier or Farina, then I'd recommend saving up your Primogems for their reruns, because both of them contribute a significant amount of damage performance, as you've seen in the team comps section. But yeah, as always, be careful with spending, don't get yourself into a dire financial situation. Skirk will eventually rerun again, and you can just save up for her upgrades next time. Now, while I'm sharing my final thoughts here, you can watch some nice C6 R1 Skirk gameplay in the background. Okay, so after playing with Skirk for more than a week now on Creator Experience server, I have come to a conclusion that yes, Skirk definitely gains a massive power boost together with Escoffier and Farina. However, her free-to-play teams aren't that bad, and she'll be able to clear Abyss pretty much with zero effort with an average account. But I think where it will become super clear why Skirk needs her premium team is going to be the Stygian Onslaught. I don't believe I can share the footage yet, but from my own experience after doing only level 5 difficulty, the hybrid rotation here will not be viable. I've tried many ways to do it, but the fact that you start with 0 Serpent points means you just gotta do the first 2 or 3 rotations with normal attack spamming, and then when the boss is left on a small amount of HP, use Burst Nuke to finish it off fast. And the thing about this Secret Source Automaton boss, this guy still has high enough resistance even when weakened, so bringing a Hydro teammate besides Farina and Escoffier is going to feel extremely painful, and instead, you want to bring anyone who can deal crowd damage to quickly lower its annoying resistance, hence why I'm expecting Shenhe, Charlotte, Kaya, and Rosaria to actually be highly valued in this first Stygian Onslaught cycle, because just with Escoffier and Skirk, the speed at which they lower that special resistance with their crowd attacks is quite slow. But yeah, other than that, I'm sure if you're watching this guide, you've seen other videos about Skirk as well. But if there's anything else I forgot to mention, or you want a more in-depth guide like how to play Skirk's top 10 teams with rotations and comparisons, please just hit the like button to let me know, because I am aware what is the average like ratio on my videos. So if you guys press the like button enough times, then I'll know there's a demand for another Skirk video. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you in Dahlia's video.